Well, hello, and welcome to Reanimated. This is Stuart, one of your hosts, and joining me in New York is H.A. Conrad. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Today, we are going to be talking about the next two episodes in the Mayfair Witches, the Anne Rice Witchy series from AMC. But before we get there, there was one little tidbit of news. Actually, here's a question for you, H.A. Have you broken down and watched any of Silo yet?
I have not. I was saving it. Have you watched it?
No, not yet. I was really strongly considering it.
I was too, but then I'm like, I can't do this without talking to Stuart because we were supposed to review this.
Well, we still
And we still
can.
have a few witchy things to get through.
We
So
got some witchy things.
and my sort of like, I can't keep track of things. So if we're actually going to do like a review, I kind of have to actually just do it one or two at a time because
Yeah.
I just blend the storylines and I give away spoilers and things like that. So
All of your memories combined into one giant
they
memory
do. This
blob.
is just what happens. This is what happens. Anyway.
But in Silo news, other than the fact that you and I have both maintained our chastity, is I saw this post. I think it was on Twitter. Hugh Howey saying, "I can't believe people think this ad is real." He's the author of the book series upon which Silo, the show on Apple Plus TV or whatever the hell it's called, is coming out. And so there's this Instagram link to a luxury listings account talking about new luxury bunker housing now available, 144 underground stories, live in the world's first subterranean community. And then there's actually a URL to Silo residences. And so he was freaking out that, or making a comment that, people seem to be reacting as if it was real. That could also be the PR firm creating fake accounts and saying, why would anybody want to live underground? It's just to continue the clickbait. But what did you read through any of this, and did you go to the website and watch their
Yeah,
video and
and
all
it
that?
was an odd I honestly wasn't sure that it was actually like show sanctioned because it was so strange.
It's very adjacent. It's not, they don't actually ever give you the wink. you
Right.
know
And so I was like, did like a fan create like, but it's pretty detailed for somebody to just be doing this. So
yeah.
I don't know. It was a little unusual, but hey, I'm all for, unusual stuff. So I have no issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it that I guess the wink is that they're showing a lot of the what's that, concept art
Yeah.
for what we've already seen in the show, the clips that we've seen of the bunkers. So that's your clue. This is the show. I'm pretty sure that if Hugh Howey is on the internet saying this is an ad, he probably had seen some part of it too. I'm excited to see the show. I love this kind of guerrilla marketing too, even though it's usually at the expense of the more gullible.
Yeah, but I think it's fine. Come on. It's just in good fun. So, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to the show and I will watch it at our appointed time whenever we decide that is.
I love also that these images just show a bunch of people in suits and ties wandering around in
Right.
here. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, okay, let's fast forward a few hundred years and see if they're still that well heeled. Um, cool. Okay, so siloresidences.com, that's out there. You guys could check that out. The other piece of news, HA, do you want to introduce?
The other piece of news, well, I mean, it's the World War Z anniversary, right?
10th anniversary. If you didn't feel old yet, there you go. Congrats.
Yeah. I uh I always kind of feel a little old, so that's all right.
Just a little. Just a little bit. So the 10th anniversary of World War Z means that now you can get a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, or not now, but in July. I guess it's this summer is the 10th anniversary, but oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
but we were talking about this, and I know because I know that this is a thing, and I know that people collect these and are really into them, but I haven't had any ability to watch like a Blu-ray in at I want to say maybe over 15 years, maybe even 18 years. That is making me feel even older. But like I know that there must be a market for this because obviously they keep releasing
Well, it's
this.
like vinyl.
Yeah, I guess so. But vinyl to me seems a little, that makes more sense to me somehow because that's like, I don't know, a little, I don't know. Vinyl's different in my mind, but maybe I'm wrong. And I know that a lot of these Blu-rays do have extras and things like that. So if you're like
It's
a
three
super,
discs, so this probably has a ton of extras, and that has always been one of the biggest selling points to me of a DVD is to be able to watch with the audio commentaries. I've talked about this before,
yeah.
but
But why
the thing
not
is
just
that
put it on
this movie had
streaming?
such a weird and challenging
Yes.
path. I wonder how much of that they really want to show the fans.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. It's like, okay, are we really making a big deal out of this specific film? I thought that was kind of odd, but I guess some people are really into it, or maybe they're just trying to spin this into more. I mean, my thought about it when I saw this was that maybe they are actually thinking a sequel, even though we saw that that had been kind of tabled. But I don't know. Well, maybe this is sort of a an indication that they might actually be moving forward with something at some point, but I think a
Hmm.
little too vague to know about that yet. So,
Well, I think people look at the gross for that film of 540 million and think, uh,
yeah, I know.
those are pre-COVID numbers, and they're just like, wow, what if we could do that again?
Hmm.
I don't know. It seems like movies do not tend to gross quite as much as actually that's not true. The Super Mario Brothers movie
Hmm.
has grossed 2.6 billion.
People, that's like the nostalgia factor of Nintendo, I suppose.
So anyway, well, World War Z Blu-ray DVD or whatever, you can get it in July, and maybe if they sell enough of them, they'll make a second movie. They'll finally get their act together.
Maybe.
Or maybe they'll say retcon, screw that movie. Let's make the Max Brooks novel adaptation, show run by him, the limited edition miniseries that we all deserve.
Right. Again, though, I think they're gonna have to update and retrofit a few things into that series, but I do
Yeah,
think that there's definitely a plausible argument for that as like a limited series. So,
yeah,
but maybe it has missed its sort of time because of all the other content out there.
it
So,
maybe has. It maybe has. And to Kyle's point, maybe nobody cares anymore. It's not that it's not as cool as we all think it was.
yeah, true, true.
However, what might be as cool as we think it was,
Mm,
Mayfair Witches, season 1, episodes 3 and 4, entitled Second Line and Curiouser and Curiouser. Oh, I hadn't realized that was the name of the fourth episode, and I immediately see how that makes sense because that's an Alice in Wonderland reference, right?
mhm.
Okay, so Second Line. Oy, let me see who. It was directed by the first person, so Axel Carolyn, and written by Sarah Cornwell. Same director for both episodes, two different writers. Second Line begins with another flashback to Scotland, to the oldie timey Mayfair witches. I think her name's Suzanne, maybe
Mhm.
this woman.
Yeah, Suzanne is the original witch, at least in this universe and also in the books.
Yeah, she
Although I think in the book she was actually um supposed to have some mental illness or something, which I
oh
don't think they've gone with there. I think they've kind of put that into the other character that she's hanging out with. And I can't remember that character's name.
well, she's not really with that other character anymore. Like the first time we meet her, she's got this little girl hanging out with her who I think was
Yeah.
her sister. But then I've on the official podcast, the host referred to that girl as her daughter. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, they
Um,
haven't really explained that part very
but
well.
that person isn't back, so I don't know what to do with that. Like, there was another character associated with her. These two episodes are mostly about the older woman, her
Eva.
mentor.
Yeah, Eva.
Yes, and she's been bored or gored by a boar, bored by a gore,
Mm,
and she's dying. And so there's a little bit of a back and forth about which is heal, or sorry, midwives heal, but they also deal with death.
hmm.
And so I think she's trying to get a little bit of a easy out rather than dying slowly from gut wound.
Yep. Um,
Yeah.
and you get the sense that Suzanne was the apprentice here, and so that's the other thing. And so this is sort of the her mentor dying, but she's going to be taking over the reins in terms of the midwifery and other things, and that like the healing and all of that. She lives here at the house with her, so that makes sense. So this is her basically coming into her own. Um, and that is, there is a lot of like furtive glances, like the men who brought her in, and so you're like, okay, this is gonna go probably sour with the people in the town. They're already giving those vibes off in
How you
this.
feel those vibes are happening?
Oh yeah.
Um, in and then we jump. Well, speaking of furtive glances, we jump several hundred years into the future, and the elevator opens,
Yeah,
and
and
there's
it's kind of what it's a pretty rough scene for Rowan.
it's pretty rough for whoever's down in the lobby. I mean,
Yep.
yes, for Rowan, but also whoever pushed the button was waiting for the elevator. You get
Yep.
onto a lot of elevators. I don't tend to. I live in a low rise area. Can you
Happily, this
imagine?
never happened to me, so I'm very happy of that.
You never
Um,
know what's going to happen when those elevator doors open, though. And I bet the next time you're standing waiting for an elevator, you might just wonder, oh no, it's
what's
Deirdre
waiting
and
for me on the
Rowan.
other side? Yeah, so Rowan's totally covered in blood. And
Yeah.
then the
Annabeth
first,
Gish on the podcast talked about this dummy, this puppet or whatever I don't forget what she called it, but that's not, obviously not her. It's
yeah,
fairly obvious that it's not her.
yeah, it looks a little weird.
She said it had bigger boobs than she did. I thought that was quite funny.
um,
But yeah, so for having a fairly small role on the show, I was glad that she was a guest on the AMC podcast about this episode. Or yeah, no, actually it was the episode before this one. For episode two.
but I like how like the first person or like she's kind of they do the sound thing where Rowan can't really hear a lot,
Yeah.
and but the first person she kind of sees is Carlotta, and Carlotta thinks that this is a good opportunity to be like, hey Rowan, I'm
Um,
Carlotta.
what's the actor's name again? Beth Clark, is that right? Or
Yeah.
Grant? Beth Grant or something like that.
Oh,
Um,
Beth Grant. Yep.
she has this way with her hands that they just look like little claws, and she
Yep.
kind of like is literally pawing and clawing at Rowan as soon as she
Yep.
meets her.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and luckily, yeah, she sees Cyprian across the street, and she's just like, I'm gonna go, and then she like walks across the street covered in blood. The cops let her go, although I guess they've already questioned her.
Yeah, and I also have to say, like, I feel like Rowan's instincts are correct because Carlotta's being so creepy. If you saw Cyprian as like this beacon of light, which I think he is, I'd be running for him too out of this place. And
She doesn't know him though. I mean,
she doesn't know him, but
yeah.
I think that at least, look, she had obviously like a weird interaction with him, and he was following her and she didn't know what he was doing, and so but in terms of like any kind of sense that she might be able to figure out what's going on, he is this, I do think he represents some level of sanity for her, in because remember she also doesn't really understand what her powers are. This is all something that she's been dealing with herself in her own head. Even her own mother has been her adopted mother has been sort of denying some of the things that have been happening, which are clearly like that was not true. So I don't like. I thought this was like a pretty nice transition to ally these two together.
It's a
Um,
little awkward. It's awkward at first, of course, because he's been spying on her. Her first questions for him are
yeah,
like, "Why have you been spying on me?" He's like, "It was to protect you." I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know about that. And then he follows up a little bit of a back and forth with, "Hey, have you seen Lasher?" And she's like, "What?" He's like, "Have you seen this presence?" And she's like, "What does he look like?" He's like, "I don't know, but have you seen him?" It
I
was
know
just
that
like,
was kind of like you're giving her like non sequiturs here. Like that was very awkward. And and as we talked about in the last episodes, or like some of the some of the script, some of the dialogue is a little clunky and weird, and just the storytelling isn't quite it like if you compare it to Interview with a Vampire, it's just not quite smooth sometimes. And you do get the sense, and maybe this is an editing decision, I don't know, but you do get the sense that sometimes, or at least I feel like sometimes the actors are struggling a little bit with it and doing the best that they can. But
I
this
get
that
that from Alexander Daddario every so often. She
yep,
feels that she doesn't quite seem comfortable with what
yep.
she's doing occasionally, but it's quite occasional.
Hmm.
Cyprian, the guy playing Cyprian, is fairly straightforward acting stuff, but she has to, I think, react to things that are more trippy and abstract, and maybe she's having a tough time with that.
Yeah, and he's basically, like at least he has another person for the most part to sort of like,
Although he has to go into his head too a lot, and then like act based on what they're telling him he's seeing, and
yeah.
we don't often get to see a lot of what he's seeing. He kind of explains it a lot of the time later, doesn't he? Which is kind of an interesting way to do his gift.
Yeah, but what I was going to say though, just in terms of like his acting style, he's very good, and he does have chemistry like with her, which I think is good. It helps sell it a lot more and helps over a little bit of the awkwardness of some of the dialogue. Um, and you do really, like you truly believe um that he has these powers and things like that. Like I think he does a great job at portraying that. And his name is Tung A Teresa, and he's really, I think he really sells it as this character. So I am, I was definitely, as I said, a little skeptical about some of the combination of a couple of characters, and there's one specific character that they cut out, Michael, who is a pretty main part in all of this, and this is obviously going to be, this is sort of who he is or who he represents. And I have to say I have no problem with it. Like I think he does a really excellent job, and I think maybe it simplifies the storyline enough to have him be like the representative of the Talamasca, and also this sort of lifeline for her.
There's
um
probably a good argument to be made also to like eliminate some of the male characters from the story.
right,
It's
well,
it's
and
supposed
also
to be a story about women by women. Having all these dudes and like potential love interests would kind of, undermines
well,
that.
right, and I guess that's like, I was like, all right, I'm really getting into this, and I did like him a lot in the first two episodes as well, but this was sort of like, and before, I didn't read of some of the sort of criticism about the combination of characters, though I had my own thoughts about it until a little bit, like until I had sort of watched them. And then I'm like, but I just think that this makes total sense. Because otherwise you just, again, it's I think you're right, just cutting down the male characters, but it's also just, there's such a vast collection of characters, and a lot of them don't have huge roles even in the books. So it's
Yeah.
like, it doesn't make sense to have this massive cast, and I do think it keeps it a little bit more streamlined. So
And there
I'm
is a
all for it.
massive cast. We really get to see a lot of that in episode 4 that we're
Yeah.
going to talk about today
I
at the
mean, it's still
wake.
massive, but
Yeah,
so I feel
it's
like they had to make some decisions somewhere, or it just becomes like you're just not going to be able to follow it as much. So
yeah. Yeah, and
mm,
I guess if you're going to focus on a larger proportion, make it of the Mayfair family. That's what we're kind of here to meet,
right.
and we get to meet a lot of them in episode 4. But yeah, so they have a little bit of a back and forth. It's quite sympathetic. He's like, make yourself at home. I've got to go deal with something. And this introduces a concept that I find a little bit of an annoying TV thing, where he's like, I'm here to protect you. I'm your protector. And then he
Yeah.
constantly is leaving her. Like these two
He
episodes, he
is.
is almost never with her.
He
And
is, and they also had to get over the sort of hurdle of the fact that, like, he's got all these photos of her on his phone. She's like, why are you following me? And it's also, why have you taken like this basically creepy stalkery you have this whole thing of me on your phone, and it's a little weird. And um not just of her, but like of her mom and all
mhm.
this other stuff. And so I like, it's all that, and then he kind of leaves her alone in his apartment, and then you know hilarity ensues. No.
This first one, he leaves her alone to go literally downstairs because his boss is there. And at first you're like, well, his boss is the one who told him, like, don't, just
Right.
observe, don't get involved. And now he's super involved.
Oh
But
yeah.
his first words to him are like, "Don't worry about it. I'm here to help. I brought the crew. We're gonna protect the house." And I did laugh out loud during this scene. It was just like, yeah, these five people get out of a car and like I don't know what they're doing. They're
They hug
spritzing.
the wall. They're
They're
like hugging the brick wall. It's
they're
like
spritzing this building.
it
They
looks
don't
like they're it looks
they
like
don't
they're like spritzing it with olive oil or something. It's
they don't
pretty.
have like a passerby shot, which I would have liked to have seen. Just like a what the hell are those people doing? Why are they spritzing? And
You
then
know what
another
though?
guy gets out of a car and does some like weird magic stuff.
But it's New Orleans. I feel
I
like
guess
there's
so.
some acceptance to people doing weird things to houses down there.
So I
So,
assume this scene is to show us that the Talamasca has these tricks and lots of fair amount of people. Um, but honestly, like it's very clear in this episode even that this doesn't even do anything. So it's really just a scene to show us that the Talamasca has some reach in New Orleans, I think.
well,
And
I think
yeah.
it's to show that, to show some of their mystical powers. I think it's also to show that the limitations are, you know, that Lasher knows what their limitations are. He knows that it was like he had to get her out of there, so just basically did a very easy thing, which was to set a fire. I like and that's I mean, I guess I again it's been a while since I've read these books, but I feel like the Lasher sort of character has limited power, and I thought that that was kind of interesting, like sort of like he can influence certain people, but it's usually Mayfair people because they have some sort of like open gate to his to communicating with him or whatever. And so the whole starting of the fire doing that stuff felt a little weird to me, but you know, I think they've taken a different tack here with him, so he has a little bit more of an omnipotent sort of, or at least he would, or at least they're kind of making that out to be that he's got a much bigger array of powers than I think he even did in the books.
Yeah. In this episode alone, he does a couple of things to
Yeah.
influence objects in the real world. And I guess I don't know if he was able to do that in the books, but in a scene shortly after the dousing of the house in magic oils, he
Olive oil and some
he,
bread and focaccia. You
oh,
just
that sounds delicious. Now I'm hungry.
yeah.
He kind of attacks Uncle Cortland
Hmm.
when Cortland's at the hotel going through Rowan's stuff. I think that's in this episode. But
Yeah, yeah.
he goes to the hotel and Lasher appears to him. He like first he breaks through the window as a rock. I don't know how he like does something and hits Uncle Cortland in the face. And then Cortland is like nervous and you know like he has talked about Lasher before. He talked about him to Deirdre. He was like,
Hmm.
"Is he here? Is he nearby?" And she's like, "I don't know where he is." So he clearly has had a relationship with this guy too, or has seen him before.
Hmm.
And he, by appearing to him, and then they have a short conversation, and he's expresses that he doesn't, he's not, he's like closed off from Rowan. And Cortland kind of, I don't know if he's showing his hand as the guy who maybe killed Deirdre, but I still think he might have. Is like, hey, now you're it's the 13 witch, right? You're gonna everything's gonna be fine. So they're kind
Oh,
of
I
like,
think he definitely was the.
yeah. I mean, I don't remember the plot from the book
I
whether he
mean,
did or not, but
I don't remember that either, but and I
it kind
don't
of
know
feels
that
like it though, doesn't it?
it does. But I think in the books, Lasher is the one that actually, he's the one who like encourages Deirdre to die. Um,
Because she kills herself like her
yeah,
mother did.
because he wants to have because he doesn't have access to the next one until the last one dies or something. So I think they kind of do like tweak that a little bit here, but I think Cortland is acting incredibly sketchy regardless. So
Yeah, I mean the show certainly keeps you guessing even into the fourth episode when they find the hired killer. But at this point, Cortland seems to know a little too much about what Lasher wants as his ultimate end game. And even though he is like his hands are shaking and he seems unhappy, something's off about the way he's reacting to this.
mm,
Um, so yeah, so Lasher has like broken through a window, which I guess he can do that. He can tap glass with a tree. He does that to the aunties later. Um, Cyprian's sister shows up for a scene just to introduce her character and reveal that she's pregnant. And then she like pieces out after the fire alarm goes off. What do you suppose they're gonna do with her character?
I mean, I think that it again, this is a little different because like Talamasca is supposed to be pretty much cut off from everybody
Like
and
Jedi?
kind of and like in part because they're dealing with these incredibly powerful mystical things and any kind of contact or sort of, familial ties puts your family at risk. So a lot of them tend to not do that or have new identities or pretend to be dead or whatever it is. And so, I mean, and then we kind of, like even in how she's talking to Rowan, it's a little odd. She thinks he's like in the CIA or makes some reference to the fact that he has like secret spy stuff going on. Like I don't think she actually knows what he does, but I assume that this tension is going to be broken later on when she finds out what he really is involved in.
Yeah, and something's gonna happen to the poor lady's baby. I mean, almost guaranteed.
I hope. I know it's not going to be good.
So stay away, Odette. I'm glad we met you, but stay away from Cyprian and Rowan. So the fire alarm goes off and they leave the protected house and Rowan's like, well, my aunt lives nearby, a 10-minute walk. I'm gonna go to the house. But the first scene we see is at the house. Meanwhile, at the house, the most messed up part of this episode is happening. um
Yeah.
like a lot of things are wrong with what's going on in this scene between Carlotta and Delphine. And what
Yeah.
did you think of this scene?
So Delphine was the nurse that was taking care of Deirdre basically her whole life. And um in the books they have the emerald, the Mayfair emerald, and so this is definitely very, very different. And we talked about how they changed what the look of this thing is, and the whole thing is that nobody but the person that this was designated for could touch it, or Lasher would like kill them. And so they kind of do that here, except Carlotta's been handling this, so that's sort of not quite the same thing.
Yeah.
But she sort of makes this comment to her sister that if we bind this thing to somebody else, he can't get at Rowan. He'll be limited to the house. And in some ways that's why Deirdre had to die, which was because somebody, probably Cortland or even Carlotta, but I think Cortland, wanted to make sure that that door was open so that he could be released and go after Rowan or be bonded with Rowan. And so this is really, really messed up. I mean, this is definitely not part of the part of the storyline, but I think it is deliberate to show you, and then it's probably like a surrogate storyline so that you can see how cold and calculating and honestly how horrible Carlotta is.
Well, she
Um,
only gets worse as
she does, but like I think that they have to show that. Like you can kind of, it's not enough that she kept this her niece um all locked up and on Thorazine and all these other things in the name of like protecting her and caring for her. It's also really interesting that she talks a lot about God and keeping the devil out and things like that, and yet she like basically condemns this and knows she's doing it, but condemns this woman to a really horrible death via possession by Lasher.
I mean,
Um,
she forces
mhm.
through like ingratiating her. She's like, no, she left it for you. Put it on. Put it on. And so finally Delphine begrudgingly puts it on. Then she realizes, oh, go get me some curtains out of the basement. She realizes she's been poisoned by Carlotta.
Mhm.
And the last thing Carlotta says to her is, may God forgive you. You were supposed to watch Deirdre. May God forgive you. And then locks her in the basement with the lights off. She
I
is
know.
terrible. But, another tour de force by Beth Grant, I'm
Hmm.
going to say.
She's pretty easy. She's a pretty like it's easy to dislike her in this. Like she does a really good job at playing a good villain.
Yeah. And then we flash back, well, we go back to Rowan walking down the street in this like flowy brown I don't know, pajama outfit. It is
Yeah,
pajamas because she's wearing them the next morning when she wakes up. But
some silk brown pajamas.
just,
I also have to say, like, okay, so fire happens in your building, weird things are going on. Maybe she wants answers, but I don't know that I'm gonna go hang out with Carlotta in the middle of the night. She was pretty creepy, even in the small interaction she had with her, but she's just gonna go traipsing around New Orleans in her silk brown pajamas. I don't know. This felt a little odd, and so part of me almost felt like she is already, I felt like something was going on with her where she was a little bit hypnotized or being influenced, and maybe that, like, she gave that vibe even before she gets to the sort of street where she's seeing um
the second
all the
line starts going
yeah,
by.
all the second line stuff.
Yeah. See, she has a nod with Josephine, who just happens to be there,
Mm-hmm.
who is Cortland's daughter, and that's maybe suspect, maybe not, but they like share a glance.
Mm-hmm.
We don't meet her again until the next episode, and then she starts talking to this woman who is a recognizable actor. Did you recognize her?
The
I forget
actor.
what. Yeah, her. She's just credited as like woman at the second line or something like that.
I did recognize her. I think she's in quite a few things, but I don't know off the top of my head.
No, I don't
Was
remember
in,
either.
but like, she's got a really good face, and
Hmm.
um, definitely, like, you buy this interaction with them, and like, and that's also why I was saying that I thought that maybe Rowan was influenced outside of whatever else is going on. Maybe it's Lasher, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's just the magic of New Orleans. But she, you know, this woman's like, oh yeah, I'm mourning somebody too, and
Yeah.
like, hey, how about you take this random drink, this weird drink, a shot. What was it? It was strange something or other, I guess some hallucinogenic drugs or something to loosen her up a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So the
Um,
woman's name is Dana Bylanson. Old woman second line is her credit, but yeah, I don't know what else I've seen her in, but she is very recognizable. I guess she was in Loki, House of Cards, and things like that. Yeah, but so she takes the magic potion, and that's it for her. The woman kind of like forces her to drink the thing. What if she was sober? Like that's super uncool. Forces
yeah,
her to drink the thing, forces her to dance with her. Also, when we clearly know that it's Lasher because there was like one interstitial cut where he was there instead of her.
yep,
Um, and then Lasher, and then she's just like drunk and dancing in the second line, which honestly sounds like so much fun. I would totally love to do it. Not necessarily while I'm being hunted by a sexual predator slash spirit ghost.
correct. And also there's, like, the people are dancing around. She's seeing the man that's being sort of celebrated in the second line. Um, like, he's sitting on top of his own little
Yeah, a lot of zombies. Well, dead people in this scene.
yeah, and she sort of, things are going in and out. And then, Lasher's kind of toying with her and being very seductive. And so that is an interesting thing to see, just how he's toying with her basically. And I think from her point of view as a doctor, as somebody that's going through all this kind of, like, very unsettling and terrifying stuff, it's and she's definitely being influenced by whatever she took. She is very much intrigued by him, and he really does a thing where it's like he's masked. It's very Phantom of the Opera.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh no, please don't bust out into an Andrew Lloyd Webber song.
They're
Um,
right
and
away very touchy. Or she's
yeah,
very touchy with him, and like they get very close together. She's clearly like not well. I don't know what she was. She was pretty forward in the bar in San Francisco too. So maybe this is just her style, but it seems like she's accelerating.
and then he just kind of melts away to I think, again, he's toying with her,
Yeah.
and she wakes up, and she wakes up in this, like, weird way,
Well,
which
she
would
goes
be,
to the house too.
yeah, she goes to the house and she sees, it's not, this would be just a very disconcerting thing, I think,
Super discon. I mean, the fact that she has that conversation with her mother, and her mother
Right.
is telling her, "You're a line. You're from a line of witches. We're mother to mother to mother to daughter to daughter to daughter, and we're all connected by this dude." And right there, and I think it's good writing for me anyway, because she's like, "Nope, that's not it,"
Yep.
and she leaves, because the dude ghost, like crossed the line,
Hmm.
and so that was
He
cool.
overplayed his hand a
Yeah.
bit there.
But then she does wake up like on the street corner in her PJs, and there's like a nice guy trying to be like, "Hey, are you okay?" Which not how anybody ever wants to wake up, frankly. But
No,
also, go
but
ahead.
then again, it's also like she's had this whole thing. Is it real? Is it not? But
Yeah,
I did like how she questioned it. Like she's definitely Lasher is absolutely trying to manipulate and use her, and she questions it. And so that's why she sort of like wakes up here and but I would imagine that that's going to cause even more questions.
I liked
Uh,
how in the scene later when she's talking to Cyprian about it, she's like, "I didn't even know it was happening, and then I was in it, and I don't know
mhm,
how I'm gonna be able to stop that." I thought that was also good, right? Like she's questioning what even power she might have to resist if he can just kind of alter her
mhm.
reality that quickly. In the meantime, Cyprian has gone back, like he left her. Right. He goes to the hotel to read the elevator, which he is blocked to his vision. He shows that he can speak Creole, patois, to the guy who's working in the hotel, which is nice. Love me some multilingual stuff. And then he goes to the morgue, somehow convincing the I don't know what this guy's job is, morgue guy.
I don't know, but he's definitely an anti-witch guy.
It's a little
We
funny that
eventually
he's in
find
this
out.
and the next episode. Yeah, but um and he's like putting his hands on Deirdre's body to try and figure out how she was killed. But he's just left Rowan alone in his apartment, he thinks, until who knows when. It's just dark out. I guess we don't know. I don't know what time second lines take place, but it feels like it's the middle of the night, but it might not be that late.
Yeah, it does feel like the middle of the night. So I don't know. He's out. I don't know. The timelines of this are a little weird. Um,
Yeah. So in this episode, like they reunite back at the house, and back at his place. Once he realizes what's been going on, he gets her back inside. They have that conversation about like how that was probably Lasher. Like every person you met or talked to tonight was probably Lasher, and I can teach you to control your powers and to use them to defend yourself. And I think it's a really nice sort of resolution. I just wish he'd been there more for her.
mhm.
And they kind of the end the episode, clasping hands, and it feels like I don't know, positive somehow, but also a little weird.
It
Also,
it's
go ahead.
quite intimate, and it's
Yeah.
very much I think, it's very much like a they're shipping these two. That's very clear. So let's but it is a very strange interaction. So more to come
Yes.
on that.
More to come on that. And also back at the First Street house, Carlotta and the other auntie, whose name I don't even know, are listening to Delphine bashing her brains out against the wall, and they're like, he doesn't like her. It's a real messed up scene.
It's messed up, but it's also that he wants to have access to Rowan, and this has trapped him. And so it's a little unclear to me whether by them doing this, was it that Rowan realized that it wasn't her mother and that it was him playing with her, or was it because he then got trapped back in Delphine? Um, and again, a little confusing because he seems to have, regardless of whoever he's kind of tied to, he still seems to have some leeway of power. So that sort of storyline isn't consistent, I think.
Yeah,
That's a
because the
bit of a gap.
Delphine thing happened earlier in the episode, and he was still able to wander around the second
Right.
line.
Right. So I don't know. Anyway, that's a confusing part for me.
That is interesting. I mean, Delphine is effectively dead by the end of this episode. Like, he doesn't take him long to deal with that
No.
situation.
And in fact, it's sort of like, well, what use was this anyway?
Yeah,
Right.
maybe Carlotta hasn't tried putting it on a rando before,
Yeah,
But I find that almost hard. I mean, because she had Deirdre for 30 years to
true.
do it too. Episode 4. Is there anything else on second line that you want to talk about?
No, I think that's it. That's it.
It's kind of weirdly not a whole bunch of things happen, but there are a lot of characters coming in and out. Same for this fourth episode. A lot of new characters get introduced. There's a couple of major set pieces. There's the funeral and there's the wake,
Hmm.
and the wake is really where a lot of stuff is happening. And Cyprian, they start the day. They start the day with oh sorry, the episode begins with another Scotland cold
Mm.
open where Suzanne is invited. Like they're having the Christian funeral for Aoife, and he, like, they get chastised by the priest for crying because he's like, "No, she's going to heaven. Can't be sad."
Hmm.
You know, religion. I love it.
And then she gets approached by somebody about like, let's go to the woods and mourn her for real, which is like, I don't know. This is like a very like for Suzanne, who clearly didn't know that this little cabal of witches existed, or that whatever they are, pagans, whatever you want to call them. This was just a very interesting and immediate acceptance of people kind of running around tearing their hair out in the woods,
They're
right?
just a bunch of ladies crying in the woods and
Mhm.
dancing, cry dancing, perhaps,
Yes.
around an effigy, which is like mostly it's just sticks with women's clothes on it. So I don't. It doesn't seem threatening or overtly a bad thing to me when I'm
I'm
watching
not
this.
saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that her immediate acceptance of this very strange little um situation just seemed a little
Yeah,
too automatic, but that's
I
okay.
felt
Like
like they were making an awful lot of noise, and I don't know how far
word
away
that
from.
that could attract other people. So that was
Yeah.
for people that were trying to be secretive. I don't know, a little confusing.
Well,
Um,
maybe it's really late and they're really far away because I don't know. We didn't watch them walk the whole. Yeah, Suzanne was a little trepidatious going out, but then she sees what they're up to and immediately joins in and starts to I don't know, really forcefully cry. Uh, it looked really cathartic, so I'm happy for them, but I feel like it's not going to end well.
oh yeah, it's definitely gonna end in a blaze of fire. They're witches after all. Or so called witches. And we segue from this into like a very confusing little dream sequence, and it kind of leads you to believe that Cyprian and Rowan have hooked up, but that's not the case. And I think probably why this is called Curiouser and Curiouser, because there's a lot of bending of reality, and there always is with Lasher, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, and so, in fact, she wakes up and no, he's just making her breakfast, which, you know, is pretty much all they did was hold hands. Um, so, or as far as we know anyway. And, they talk a little bit more about his powers. And then they're also talking about Deirdre's funeral. Yes, I think she would go to the funeral, but it like this was an interesting decision once they get there. So
Yeah, there's a couple of interesting things happening, not just in this scene, but yeah, as we get to the funeral for sure. But she is still wearing the brown silk pajamas
mhm.
that she woke up on a street corner in
Yeah,
last
wouldn't
night.
you change out of those
I would have
those
been like, I need a
pajamas?
shower and I will sleep in literally anything other than these disgusting
They're street
clothes.
pajamas. I mean, you've been on the ground in them. That's probably not, and in New Orleans, that's not good.
Yeah, I don't know why their wardrobe or costume department was like, no, for continuity, we have to keep the pajamas. I mean, she doesn't have any of her stuff, and her
True.
other clothes were soaked in blood. So
Mm.
maybe these are actually Cyprian's brown pajamas.
I don't know, but they're pristine considering she's been, in
Yeah,
the streets in them. But
you know that they would actually just have stains
oh
all
yeah,
over them.
definitely.
Either way, pajamas aside, they talk a little bit about the funeral, and she's like, "You're coming with me, right?" And he's like, "I will not leave your side."
And then he leaves her side.
And of course he does. Of course he leaves her side because he gets a phone call as they're walking into the funeral. Like not even he's not even there for very long. I feel like actually no, they did the whole service together. Although she says like I should go pay my respects, and he's like, okay, bye. I'll see you later. I'll be at the back of the church. He
Yeah,
doesn't stay with her.
and again, this is a plot. This is a problem in the plot because he knows how dangerous Lasher is. He knows the history of this whole family. He also knows, or it seems like he's aware of how dangerous other people in the family are in addition to Lasher. So
Hmm.
why would you be just leaving her on her own in this particular situation? It's
And
just a
as
very
as soon as he leaves, Carlotta's like there with her claws again, grasping onto her.
Mhm.
Um, so he must be watching this and going like, "Oh yeah, I probably should have." I mean, his presence probably wouldn't have deterred Carlotta from coming up, and then he would have been wrapped in their stuff too.
right. And well, we can talk about where he's going and what he's doing later, but or maybe we can talk about it now, but um it seems like he would be a little bit smarter about what he's dealing with. I mean, he's in the Talamasca. He's been observing this family for years. He is fully aware of all the tricks and all the sort of, maybe not all of them, but a lot of the dynamics of this whole family. And again, I just don't buy it's hard to believe that he would do what he's doing, although um it's an interesting thing to kind of find out another part about the story with Deirdre's death um and Lasher's influence on certain things. So um you know and as far as Rowan is concerned, she's kind of been thrown into the wolves den. There's lots of family dynamics going on.
He starts
uh,
to sort of describe some of those. He's like, that Mayfair married a Kennedy. That Mayfair's been alive since the Civil War, which is a joke, but you're not sure. Maybe it's actually true. Um, yeah, there's a lot, like, this is where they start to pull at the thread that is the Mayfairs, which is kind of like a cool thing, and we get to do a little more of it later. And I've forgotten, we also had a scene of the aunties going into the basement to Delphine's corpse and realizing the necklace was gone, which was the other thing, like physical world thing that Lasher did. I kind of
mhm.
attributed to the last episode. I guess it could have happened in between. He has taken the necklace, which
Yep.
seems like a big deal. If he can move the his phylactery or whatever we're calling that thing, that seems like a big deal.
It does. And so that's kind of interesting.
I'm assuming it was him. There was nobody else in the
Yeah,
house.
there's nobody else who would have been able to get it. But and then also at the funeral, lots of stuff is going on. Cortland's like cutting Deirdre's hair to do something with it. Um, you know, she's kind of Rowan is sort of, remember, these are all people that she's just getting to know, like she did not know they existed.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's got this cousin and Cortland and Carlotta, and then Carlotta and Cortland definitely have a lot of animosity happening. Um, and so, you know, this is and I have to say, like Rowan's trying to negotiate a lot of stuff. Um, and she's even going with this group of people to the like
Cemetery.
cemetery and sees her own name on the whole mausoleum thing. And so
And the
that's
fact that everybody seems to know who she is, like they know her by sight, it seems like, when she
right.
walks into the church.
They know her, but they also know that basically Carlotta told everybody she was dead.
Yeah.
That's weird.
But
Um,
in this family, they're probably like, yep, old Carlotta. And there she goes again, doing crazy things, being terrible and evil.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, this the cemetery. Oh, also at the end of the funeral scene, Lasher blows open the church doors and you know showers everybody in rose petals, and like people are smiling at this, and I have to think, you know, there would be some people who would be horrified.
Well, I mean,
That's
and isn't that the dynamic? Because
yeah.
Carlotta's the one that keeps saying, like, we need to protect ourselves from this devil, from this evil thing. And, hides behind God or whatever that philosophy that she might have is, again, questionable given some of her actions. Especially, pretty horrific actions towards Deirdre, towards Delphine and everybody else, honestly, towards Rowan. Like she basically stole Rowan from her mother and sort of told her, not even sort of told her adoptive mother, well, if you want her, you can't be in contact and she can't know about this. By the way, all those fail safes, all those sort of things about, it seems like everybody knew a lot about Rowan. And it,
Yeah.
I don't know, again, this is kind of weird that it's in the modern day, because I think that there's just a lot more at your disposal if you really wanted to find somebody. So it feels a little implausible, but I don't know. That this is another kind of weird thing. But then Carlotta says that there's other people in the family that view Lasher as like benevolent, that he's there to help the family. And you can definitely tell that Cortland thinks that. Although, again, when we saw Cortland being sort of harmed by Lasher, he's clearly like on the line of like fear and
Oh, he's definitely scared. I mean, maybe that's just Harry Hamlin's performance, but like anytime he talked to Deirdre about Lasher, it seemed like with an edge of fear.
yeah.
When he was not face to face with him, but looking in the mirror and he's behind Lasher's behind him, he was wincing. He was like ready to get his ass kicked,
Mm.
or worse. So yeah, but so he I think the idea is that he thinks Lasher's a gift. That comes up later with Rowan. Carlotta is warning her that some people will tell her that he is a gift, whereas she thinks he's a curse. So yeah, that's a cool dynamic that you have between these two, the patriarch and this like pseudo matriarch and Carlotta.
Well,
The
and
the
also
so
you also, I mean, if you look at it from Rowan's point of view, you also have these like Carlotta's pretty terrifying. She's doing the claw creepy thing. Cortland seems more affable, and he seemed like that to Deirdre too, where he was the sort of port in the storm. He's the one that has like this. He has parties. The house is filled with light. The contrast between his house and the Mayfair house are like absolutely the both ends of the spectrum.
Mhm.
Um, Go to the Mayfair house, and it's dark, it's dank, it has a lot of secret corners. His house is full of secrets, but they're kind of out there in the open, or people are masked and things like that. So the two of them have a very different quality, and you could even see how Deirdre reacted to Cortland, and in some ways how Rowan is reacting to him. I don't think she necessarily trusts him, but I think he seems a lot more accessible than Carlotta does, and a lot less like, I guess, more. He seems a little bit more palatable, I guess, in terms of like, if these are new family members, who would you gravitate towards,
Oh
even
sure.
sneaky.
Well,
Um,
I would go to cousin Tessa, frankly,
well,
but
right, but she's still very much associated with Cortland. So
I don't
there's
even know whose she is.
oh,
Is she
not
one of his
Cortland.
daughters?
The other, she's
You're
the
thinking of Josephine.
yeah, I'm
And
thinking
Josephine seems okay too, but
she does, but she's also got her own motives, I'd say. And
and
Tessa is I don't yeah, Tessa's not Cortland's daughter, but she seems a little bit more approachable, and a little bit more on Rowan's level. So
so at the cemetery, yes, Rowan sees her name on the mausoleum, which is messed up. We also see the guy from the morgue taking pictures because although he described his meeting that he was inviting Cyprian to as the Brotherhood, he's there by himself, which makes me think, I don't know, maybe it's a Brotherhood of One. Maybe
yeah,
he's a wolf. Maybe he's a wolf pack of one. He'll show up with some other anti-witch people later. So then to the wake, she like because Cyprian walking into the cemetery gets a phone call that this crazy guy who we had a scene of trying to jump off of a parking lot roof is tackled by two Talamascans, I guess. And now they like Talamasca is calling him to go and help somehow, probably by laying on hands to find out if that's their interrogator, I guess, is Cyprian. It seems like he has a really important job for the Talamasca to also be a protector of Rowan, because
mm,
clearly he's not going to be able to protect her when he's constantly getting called away.
right.
um like, so why not put another Talamasca guy on her? Also, by the end of this episode, Talamasca to me is a big question mark. They might be bad guys. Like,
Yeah, and
more on
there's
that later.
yeah, and this is sort of Rowan adjacent, so maybe there's a reason why he was called, but he was basically called to read the guy that they have in this parking garage, and he's in a lot of pain, he's being tormented, and it turns out, and he basically confesses that he killed Deirdre. And this is the big reveal here, is that it's Lasher torturing him from the inside. And I think he does reveal himself to Cyprian. Cyprian sees him, right? Like,
We see him. I don't think we see Cyprian react to seeing Lasher
okay,
emerge from
so
the guy.
that was the part I was like, did he reveal himself to Cyprian? Was that for our benefit? But basically the minute that the guy kind of confesses to what he did, Lasher basically makes him kill himself, which is pretty awful. Breaks his own neck.
Yeah, with no hands.
Right.
Just
And then
wild.
Cyprian again, Sabrine's conversations with other people in this organization, things seem incredibly sketchy. And there feels like there's ulterior motives with the Talamasca. He very much wants to get back to Rowan, and there's like, I don't know, there's a little bit of a, oh, case closed. This was just this guy that killed Deirdre. And he's skeptical about it too, but there's nothing much that he can do. Um, and so he starts to go back to wherever Rowan is, but he
No,
has no.
he doesn't. He goes
No,
to the
I mean,
archives.
he goes to the archives, but like,
He doesn't
that's
go
right.
find Rowan until so much later. Like he
Yeah, you're
does
right.
text her at one point when she's at the wake. He's like, "Hey, you're at my place, right?" And she doesn't respond because she's like, "I
That's
am."
yeah, that's what I was thinking of, is that he texts her, but then it doesn't, and she's, I mean, she's in the midst of the Mayfair thing, and she
Yeah.
goes back to the house, and she's in the thick of it. And I guess the things that here she's, again, it's sort of like a complete sensory overload for her, because it's all these people. She doesn't know who to trust. People are trying to share information with her, and a lot of information, like, you know, I think that her instinct is correct about Carlotta, that Carlotta is incredibly sketchy, and admits that she's the one who told everybody she died. And but then in another moment gives her photos of her adoptive mother. And there's just, it's interesting because Carlotta tries to be completely reasonable about why she did all this. But if you're Rowan, who had never heard any of this before, I think your instinct is to be skeptical and maybe leave that house immediately. The fact that she stays, well, maybe she wants to find out more, but it's a little, I don't know that I would ever stay in that house alone with Carlotta, I guess.
I thought they were writing Carlotta to seem quite reasonable in this scene, even though we know she's
They were,
not.
and she seems like, I
It
mean,
kind of works.
and I have to say, Beth Grant does, as I've said, she's a great villain. She walks this line
Yeah.
of like self-righteousness and justifying her very questionable actions to hide behind the shield of righteousness. But you can totally see on Rowan's face, from her perspective, she's like, oh, this is not kosher.
And just
um
the difference in Beth Grant's performance in scenes like this one and later when she's outside too at the dinner is
yeah.
so night and day that I just thought that was a really good performance. Maybe it's too obvious, but like just she goes from like pleading and placating to this other thing. And we'll get to that scene, but I thought that was super cool. Cortland shows up at the wake and proclaims parties, let's start the party, and brings a lot of the other family members with him, including well, I only know her name because it was on the X-ray, like the additional information on Amazon Prime. So Alicia Mayfair is the woman who calls her daughter a social justice warrior, who is
Oh, okay.
Tessa. And apparently, what qualifies her to be a social justice warrior is the fact that she says, nobody in our family is a surgeon who went to Stanford and yada yada,
Mm.
and talks about burned women. Um, anyway, so like she seems like a nice kid. And there's also a woman named Dolly Jean Mayfair who is black. And so we have some interesting sort of dynamics going on in this family, obviously, where they are, I don't know, blended or whatever. But you know some of the history of this from the books. It's interesting to see it in the modern day.
Yeah, because there's all these family lines, they all stay together, and a large part of this is the genetic component. And it turns out that Lasher is a huge proponent of all of this because like there's a reason why he wants to keep everybody kind of like close at hand. Depending on how the gifts, quote unquote, sort of manifest themselves, to have a bigger sort of gene pool to do that is important. So there's that. I forgot that one of the things with Carlotta, in terms of like, again, the huge contrast between her and Cortland and exactly how she's justifying what's happening. She gives, like, in addition to the photos of Ellie that she gives Rowan, she also gives her Deirdre's rosary. And
Yeah, she forces it over her neck. Like she
yeah, like
doesn't give her a chance.
she's really not even, she's not messing around, and she's like, all right, just put that on here. And there's just like this ickiness to all of it, that is disturbing. I don't, if I were Rowan, I don't think I would stay in that house, but she's got this curiosity
Yeah.
of, to try to find out what's happened to her mother. So there's,
There's other people trying to figure stuff out of this wake too, because Cortland has basically shown up to go through Carlotta's drawers, which I
oh
was
yeah.
happy to see were just as messy as mine,
Mhm.
like her like envelopes and paper clips.
Well, he's pretty
Looking,
clearly looking for the necklace,
he's
right?
looking for the necklace, but instead he finds a pipe, which he then later just explains to Rowan belonged to Julian, who you brought up last time we talked, who
Hmm.
was a I guess is his dad and was a male. Was he like a designee? No, he was, but he was a powerful witch in the family.
He wasn't officially a designee, or maybe he was, but he's the only, at least in the books, he's only the only male witch
Interesting.
that they know of. Or that, and again, this is all in the books. This is all sort of the assessment of the Talamasca, and this is in their records. But he is sort of he was one of the like puppet masters of the whole family, and definitely was messing around with the different like genealogy and things like that, and did a lot of creepy, disturbing things. So Cortland is talks about him, and that is, I wonder if we'll see Julian later on in a flashback or something.
Well, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so he doesn't find the necklace. The party goes on, and then it ends after the conversation outside between Cortland and Carlotta, where they kind of get after each other a little bit.
Yep.
Um, and then Carlotta's like, "Stay for dinner. You can look around the house." And Rowan's like, "That sounds like a great idea."
And,
Meanwhile, Cyprian is at the archives looking up the Dutch letters of the Mayfair family. I feel like this doesn't have to happen right now. You don't know
yeah.
where your protection is, where your person is.
Hmm.
It's just a little bit laughable. And in these scenes where Rowan is staying for dinner, the walls start to move, lights are flickering, and this is where I feel like she's really Alice in Wonderlanding a
Oh, it's
lot.
hardcore.
Yeah. Eventually, she just goes up to she finds Deirdre's room. There's the key necklace right there, and it's kind of interesting how this scene goes. She just like takes off the rosary, drops it on the floor, puts on the key necklace, and goes into a ecstasy moment almost
Hmm.
right away.
And almost immediately Carlotta like comes up to the room and sees what's happened, and you know her face is amazing. Like Beth Grant just does an incredible job.
Yeah,
You can see everything on her face,
she
and
flips a switch.
yeah, I tried to protect her from this, and she's putting on the necklace.
But this
Um,
basically, she's like, all she has to see is this, and then she's like, "Well, I guess I have to kill her." Like,
yep, pretty much.
but why would she think that she could?
I don't know. I think that at some point she was able to at least exert some amount of power over Lasher, or she thought she could. And I think she figured, well, this is the best way to do it. If I can't, she now has the necklace, which means that she's now the designee. I think that some of that, again, a little bit clunky in terms of how they revealed it. They have Josephine basically tell Rowan about the designee thing, that Carlotta doesn't actually own the house, and
Mm-hmm.
that there's a reason why Carlotta is trying to exert her influence over Rowan, et cetera, et cetera. Rowan was unaware of any of this, and basically Josephine's like, go and talk to the lawyer. And I mean, I think that it makes sense, and Josephine is definitely acting as sort of like uh, she's her father's um she's under her father's influence, or she's part of that part of the family. So I like Josephine, and I think she's good, but like I also think she's got her own motivations, which are probably aligned with Cortland's. And so
Yeah,
so
she feels more what's the word? She feels like a little lighter than Cortland, a little less
yeah,
agendized.
but I think that's deliberate,
Yeah,
because she'll be
exactly.
received in a different way, and you see them together, and it kind of checking in how everything went when they're outside the house. So
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think they're acting in tandem. And so in any case, Rowan is aware of all this when she finally finds the necklace. And so I think Carlotta has won. She won against Cortland's influence, even when Deirdre managed to escape her clutches for a brief little moment, even though the result was not something that she wanted. And that's kind of what Carlotta, I think, was trying to avoid with Deirdre, was having like another witch. So I think that this is sort of like, well, this is the last straw. This, I tried to trap him, I couldn't do that, and now I'm gonna take care of business because I'm running out of time. So
And,
I think she was more impressed with her own powers, or thought she had more powers than she actually had.
she's not dead yet. We have her story hasn't ended, but this the end of this episode certainly leaves a lot of things up in the air. Cyprian has he got a text from Rowan, who's like sending him a picture of the necklace in her hand, or the pendant, and he's like, "Where are you?" And she doesn't respond, and then she's left her phone upstairs as she goes to dinner. But he's like, "Well, I guess I need to go to First Street House," and so he goes there. Carlotta, meanwhile, is giving a long and unkind prayer about all of her four mothers, um, including Rowan in it, saying, forgive her, God, because she's a huge sinner, huge sinner.
Mm-hmm.
And then lights everything on fire.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
I mean, her sister's upstairs asleep too. Like,
Yeah.
Carlotta has gone around the bend. I think that's what we can just assume, is that maybe, whether or not she feels like she can pull this thing off, she's gone. Yeah, she's nuts. She's lost it.
Yeah,
Too
and
much.
again,
Yeah.
she's putting off such creepy vibes. I have to say, like maybe Rowan wants to find out how far she'll take it. Maybe Rowan's seeing if she'll reveal the whole thing about the house or whatever else. Maybe she'll reveal more about her mother and or mothers. So I think maybe that's what's keeping her there. But
It's just one of
that
those
house,
dinner invitations you really wish you had not accepted.
right? And also, I think that with other people in the house, there was some level of safety or security where there were other people there, and I think I would have been out of there in a heartbeat. but again, that's not how this. They have to keep the storyline going. And I do think that one of the great things about the scene with them is just how normal Carlotta is about the dinner. And then it's like when Beth Grant turns, like when this character turns, she turns really hard.
Mm-hmm.
She makes a very hard left hand turn, and suddenly everything is a little really desperate.
Yeah, it's super
And I
bad.
think the minute she starts going into the prayer,
Yeah.
you can see Rowan's face is like, oh, this
It's
isn't
not
gonna.
like this was grace either. She'd already encouraged Rowan to start eating. Like, this was some like weird mid-dinner prayer where she suddenly stands up to pray too. Like, there was nothing normal going on here.
Mhm.
Um, and then Cyprian breaks into the house.
Finally, he shows up.
He finally shows up just in time to get stabbed with a carving knife.
Stabbed
In
really hard and in a bad spot.
not a
So
great spot. And they start to try and like escape from the house, which is the dining room is on fire, but you assume a house this old, it'll probably all burn.
oh yeah, because
Unless,
it's all like that old. It would go up like a tinder, like
yeah.
so.
And she
Yeah.
started it with oil. So
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna burn. And Lasher shows up right behind Carlotta. We don't know if it's for the first time or not.
Mm-hmm.
And whispers in her ear, "She's already mine." Tee hee hee. And she
Yeah.
looks unhappy. And then that's it, really. Oh, he shuts the front door. I did not understand that.
Me neither. Like now they're trapped. I don't know.
I'm
So
sure he doesn't want Cyprian to be involved. I don't know what his take is on lovers of his designees.
yeah,
Maybe
it's
he's
probably
cool with
not
it.
good because he doesn't seem to be, super excited, and like maybe some of the whole thing with the guy who killed Deirdre was a distraction for Cyprian, which kind of feels how it was. But this doesn't seem like it's gonna. I mean, Cyprian stabbed. It can't really be a good thing, right? To
No,
be
plus isn't he like seeing the whole history of that knife as it's in him too?
right. So it's not like this is gonna be a bad thing. So
I
anyway.
keep wondering how, like, if when he picks up his cell phone with his gloved hand and then puts his phone up to his ear, does he not see the history of his phone through his earlobe?
Oh, true. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I don't know how his powers work. Maybe it's
Just
just
his hand?
hands. He has
Huh.
40 pairs of gloves. Anyway, it was an interesting episode. I was a little bit like frustrated with how they're making Cyprian this like terrible protector. Uh,
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think that that's one part where they misstepped. I think they could have make it a little, could have made it a little bit more out of his control, or showed he was being influenced or something, because he does disappear a little bit too conveniently, in a lot of these spots. So especially when Rowan seems to need him the most.
he
So
also had this interaction with the guy, some guy in the Telemasca who's not his boss, but seems to be maybe his boss's boss. I'm not sure. That was really, he tells his boss, he tells this guy that the elevator was wiped. And the guy says, thanks for letting me know. We'll look into it. You go. You're done. Goodbye.
yeah, we don't
And
need help anymore, and that's a little. He gets a brush off. That seems suspect.
yeah, so there's something going on. We'll find out what it is maybe in the next couple of episodes. I don't know. What are you thinking so far? We're 4 in. Are you liking it?
There's parts I like. As I said, there's a lot of things that I think they could have probably smoothed over a little bit more. I would like to see a little bit more sort of like smart storytelling and continuity, and like when you see actors sort of struggling a little bit with it, then that it takes you a little bit out of it. I think that they do a pretty good I think that, to me, the standouts in terms of acting, I think Beth Grant does an incredible job. So she's really good. I do like Cyprian, and despite some of these things that they're making decisions about with his character. And I do like the sort of unfolding mystery and the sort of rat's nest that Rowan is trying to untangle with the Mayfair. So I think that they set those things up well. The things I'm really not loving are the questionable, like, I think Lasher is more interesting if you have some kind of limitation on his powers, and I don't think that they're consistent in what they're showing with him, and so that to me is the one of the weaker points of the series. The Talamasca as an organization, I don't know that they've done the best job at showing what they're supposed to be or why. And again, maybe they have their own motivations and things like that. And we know what they are and how they got founded because we've read these books, or at least I do. But I don't know that they've done an incredibly good job at showing that. And I'm hoping that maybe the series will enhance that, and maybe we'll get to see more flashbacks of the Mayfair family to fill in some of these things. I would love to see Julian. And I don't know where they're going with this locked in the house thing. Um and I'm hoping that it isn't what I think it's going to do, which is, having to have Rowan capitulate to Lasher, but I have a feeling that's where we're going.
Hmm.
So and she's, again, I don't know that they developed her character enough, so I maybe that'll get bolstered later on. But some of the more interesting things about these stories are a lot of actually not to do with Rowan, but with the historical, like, witches in the family, like Julian and Mary Beth, and like as you go back. So I'm hoping for a little bit more of that, but there's not that many episodes left. So we'll have to see what happens.
No, we are already halfway through. I have been enjoying it with a couple of exceptions, like those little things that I've been mentioning. I will say Jack Houston, I think, did a good job in the second line episode. I think he did well. Yeah, I think he came across as the right amount of like mysterious, like
Creepy.
sorry.
Mysterious and creepy. I think he did both. Yes.
Yes, yeah. But I think I think that he was doing the job of what I would have expected Lasher to do in that series of interactions. And so I thought that was good. And I'm still interested to see how this story continues. I guess I do also want the Talamasca to have a little more definition. It's cool for them to be a shadowy group, but they also just seem to have, they're like this Hall of Justice sort of weird group of people who, I don't know. I want to know more, and I guess that's a good thing. It means that I'm interested in what else they've got to bring to the table, and I'm also interested in what the morgue guy with the camera has to bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, modern day witch hunters, I suppose, or whatever it might be. That's kind of what they seem to be setting him up as,
Yeah.
or maybe another organization that's anti-Talamasca. But we can see maybe how that unfolds. To be clear, I think Jack Houston does a pretty good job in this. I liked him better in these episodes than I did in the first two. I think some of this is, again, just maybe a little trouble with the storytelling. He's a mysterious character that doesn't get to talk all that much. So, you have to kind of get a lot out of the appearances that he makes. But I definitely liked a lot more of what he was doing here. So maybe we'll get more of that in the next couple episodes.
Yeah.
I'm sure we will, since they're locked in the house, and maybe that's what this is going to go to, is that he's going to torture them or do whatever he's doing in the next couple episodes, because they're now under his power. So
Yep, exactly. Well, let's see what happens next time we get together, and we will talk about episodes 5 and 6.
yeah,
Sound
so
good?
that
So
sounds
wonderful. If you are watching this show or watched it in January and February when it came out, give us a holler. Let us know what you thought, or what you think. You can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at reanimatedpcast, and you can see all of our episodes online at reanimated.podbean.com. And I hope you are staying away from weird wailing parties in the woods at 3 a.m.
or random spirits that influence families.
Whatever
Yeah,
happens, never accept a necklace from Carlotta.
yeah, true. And until next time, ciao.
Thanks for listening, and bye-bye for now.